Yo, yo, yo. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Brothers in Arms, a new way for men to talk. I am your host, comedian Edgar Rivera, and this week I'm actually on the road working. Thank you, baby Jesus. So I won't be on video, but I'm still here with my brothers, Dr. Dan Radner, comedian Eric Nieves, and back again, my brother from another, Robb Davon-Butler. What's happening, brothers?
Good to see you. Good to have Robb back. Welcome back, Robb.
Yeah. Good to be here. Good to be here.
Definitely, man. Dr. Dan, how are you, Dr. Dan? How was this week?
It was good. I mean, I have to say, I'm in a really good mood. Things are just moving along nicely. It feels like the universe is just saying yes to lots of things. So I kind of feel like I'm in a mood like, I don't know if you guys have ever had acupuncture, but after acupuncture where you're like, you get super relaxed. And I mean, some people would just say, like, if you're really high, it's the same thing. You're just like, wow, everything feels good.
Yeah.
Pop-Tarts taste good right
really
now.
I like how you said acupuncture and Robb went like this. No needles.
Well, not for nothing. Like now I want to get really high while getting acupuncture, because now how amazing must that be, right? I mean, if one is almost as good as the other, you imagine you combine them. Oh, I got to try that. Yes.
Well, I'm happy that you're feeling good, Dr. Dan, because usually every week is like a blur, but now your universe are combining and you're feeling great. So I'm happy for that. How about you, Eric? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm starting to feel a little anxious about turning 50, which I will be turning 50 very soon. So that's kind of, you know.
To it?
Well, I mean, like when you're young, you think, oh, by the time you're celebrating 50, you got like a false hip. You know what I mean? You have like a different view of what 50 was when you were a kid. So I don't really feel old, but, it's a significant number.
Well, let me just say this, though. 50 is not like it used to be, and I mean that. Like, in terms of actual longevity and what people expect, it's totally different. My brother's about to turn 52, so it's, But it certainly is a landmark where I remember thinking my parents were, like, quite old when they were 40. And then I turned 40, and I was like, what?
It changes. You keep on moving it. No, 80, 90. Well, Eric's the oldest
80's
one here.
the new 30.
I had a friend the other day tell me, Eric, Sarah Contreras told me the other day that when you turn 50, your mind start playing tricks on you. It's like it's all like downhill. So I don't know, man. Good luck with that.
Gee, thanks, Sarah.
I must be mature. My mind's been playing tricks for longer.
Damn.
What about you, Robb? Welcome back to Brothers in Arms, man. How you doing, brother?
Man, every day above ground is a good day, in my opinion, guys. I mean, there's a lot of craziness going on in the world. It's a tough time for a lot of people, but I think every breath that we take, every chance we get to do life again is a good day. So even if I stepped in a pile of dog dung, it's a good day. Still a good day.
Nice. I can't believe he said a pile of dung.
Yeah, he realized you could say shit, right? He didn't have to. He had to be very specific. Say dung. You know what I mean?
I'm sorry, I have PTSD from this other pod that I do.
I got you.
And you can't. There's no swear word. So I said pissed off. And then in our recap call, the guy's like, "Man, you cussed, Robb." I'm like, "I didn't cuss." He said, "You said pissed off." I was like, Are we adults here? Like, what are we talking about?
Ladies and gentlemen, Robb does a podcast for kindergarten.
Today, I'll be reading the Book of Clifford.
The big red dog.
This dog is pissed off. You can't say that about Clifford.
You can't say that.
Nice, man. That's nice, fellas, man. I'm glad, man. I just took a road trip. I was away. I went back east to the cold weather, and I'm happy to be back in the West Coast. I don't know, and it wasn't even that cold, but I was like, ooh, no, man.
It's cold today, man. You got home at the right time.
Nice.
We're about to lose 20 degrees by tomorrow. I know you're in Ohio, Dan, so I know you got some cold weather coming your way soon if you haven't gotten it already.
We do, but it's different than when you're in New York. In New York, you got to walk around in it. People always ask me, they're like, how can you handle the weather in Cleveland? And I'm like, compared to New York, it's nothing.
Because you don't walk around.
I go from inside a house to inside a car to inside another building.
Dr. Dran drives right into the building. He's like, I don't go to the
Right.
mall
I mean,
unless
I've
I could
been
go into
arrested
the
several
building.
times.
He built a bat cave on the side of his on the side of his workplace to make sure he could just go straight in. You know what I mean? And then his outfit just comes from the ceiling. He's dressed as the doctor.
Silly me. I thought Dr. Dan had a chauffeur. I didn't think he was doing much driving at all these days.
Oh, I don't know if that's me making a good impression or a bad impression. That's really the way.
It could go either way.
He's not capable of driving for himself anymore.
Especially
I'm
in the
almost
snow.
50.
He's almost 50. We got to get him off the road before he kills somebody.
His mind's always playing tricks on him.
That's hilarious. Yo, fellas, man, I'm happy that we're back here together again. I'm happy that Rob joined us this week, and I'm very happy to get into this episode. So there's four of us now. Let's get into it. Dr. Dan, bring us in.
All right, here we go with old news, maybe from yesterday.
That's right, because it's only old news because we haven't said it today. But we're going to talk about something very important today. We've actually been talking about it amongst ourselves for quite a while. The issue with the NFL and mental health. Lately, there's been a lot of players coming out publicly and talking about their bouts with depression and anxiety. You think of Lane Johnson from the Philadelphia Eagles. He tried to get off his antidepressant, and it put him in a really bad state. He had to miss games. You have Calvin Ridley, the wide receiver from Atlanta. He stepped away from the game and said, I have to take care of my mental health. And the most recent one, and to me, the most glaring one, is A.J. Brown going on social media, going on Instagram, and talking about his battle with depression and the fact that he was so depressed in 2020, he was considering suicide. And then he implored anyone that would listen, if you have something on your mind, if you're dealing with something, talk to somebody, get help. Just upfront about it. And this all kind of started when I watched Fox NFL Sunday and they interviewed Lane Johnson. And it started a 10-minute conversation on Fox NFL Sunday about mental health. And Jay Glazer admits his issues with depression. And the rest of the crew is surprised because they've known him all this time and he never talked to him about it. So I really like this wave of discussion in mental health in the NFL because I think that, you look at the NFL and you think about the NFL, you think about big, tough, strong guys. And, they can deal with anything. And if they can be open about their mental health, then it's okay for the everyday guy to do it. And maybe it can start more conversations. So I'm really excited about the direction I'm seeing in discussing mental health in the NFL.
Nice.
It's a big deal, not just because that they're leaders, and that's true, but the more we do this in society in general, the better. But it really is true. When you see people of that high profile doing these things, and especially, somebody in the NFL, these tough guys, seemingly tough guys, and you realize, mental health, it's not being tough to have these struggles. If anything, it's tough to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And that's what's starting to come out.
Wow. And I'm glad Rob joined us today for this episode, because is this something that's happening now? Like, would you say 20 years from now the NFL cared about mental health when it came to athletes, Eric? Or is this?
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think the question is, what do I think that 20 years from now?
No, 20 years ago.
Ago.
Let's say ago. Let's go back 20 years. Was mental health a big issue in the NFL as it is now? As the guys is coming out now, where they are.
Oh man, you're just gonna open me up to all these behind the curtain things, huh?
Because for the listeners, if you've never joined or you're listening for the first time, Rob played in the NFL, and that's why I'm very excited to have him here today, because this topic has to do with the NFL, and we get an inside, tip on it.
All right, wait, hold on. We're excited to have Rob here no matter what. I just want to say.
That's true. Even if he only played badminton, we just love his opinions. But remind us and inform the audience that doesn't know, how long did you play in the league?
That's a great question. So first and foremost, I played in the NFL for 4 years, and then I played a year in the AFL. So I started off with the San Diego Chargers, and then I think I'm wearing the Los Angeles Charger gear right now, but they were San Diego when I ran with them. I actually came in the same draft class as Phillip Rivers, undrafted, and made that team. And then I played with the Baltimore Ravens after that, Kansas City Chiefs, and I played with the Kansas City Brigade. So to answer your question, I think mental health has always been an issue, if I'm being honest, Edgar. But the attention, the resources, or lack thereof, it wasn't a thing. I mean, concussions and concussion protocol wasn't a thing. So it's like this evolution of the sport from making it more safe in light of concussion protocol, CTE, and now we're adding into it the mental health conversation. So there's several iterations that have transpired in the last 15 years since 14 years since I've been out of the game, that I think are the right strides in terms of the players. Now, growing up in the 80s in Pittsburgh, listen, if there wasn't a bone sticking through your leg, okay, it was put some dirt on it, suck it up, buttercup, and get back in there. And you got chastised or chided or called names when you were hurt. And there's this adage when you play football, and it goes like this: you can't make the club in the tub. So unless you are literally injured, like hurt is a given. Everybody operates at a base state of being hurt. Like something is always hurting. And back in those days, when you had a pain, then there was a way to minimize the feeling or the experience of pain through either anti-inflammatories or pain medication. So you have this sort of chemical dependence that can occur, and then you have this mental war that says you can't be hurt, you can't get injured, you have to be perfect, you have to make every play. We know that that's not true, but that's certainly how it feels. And so I would say it was big, but there was no one or nothing, no one was addressing it, right, at the league level or even the personal level, because therapy was something that was for crazy people. And you can't be that high functioning and be one of the top athletes in the world and be a crazy person and need therapy. And so it was greatly ignored. I'm glad it's getting a lot of light now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say, Dr. Dan?
What's that?
You want to join? You want to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Rob is saying, and I appreciate you being here, Rob, with us to give us an inside scoop, because you were in it. We can speculate. We can tell you what we were seeing from the outside, but you saw it from the inside. You know what was going on in some of those locker rooms. I'm sure you had conversations behind the scenes with people. And I think it really is important that we recognize that you can still be tough as nails, but need to talk about these things. And look, if you're playing football in the NFL, you're already tough as nails. Like that is, it's a severely rough sport. Just from observing it, you can tell us from the inside out. And what you're saying about, everybody's hurting all the time certainly rings true. And I don't see how they wouldn't. I used to play tackle football with my friends in high school when I was a high schooler who would just like heal like Wolverine. And I would hurt some then too. But these guys, they're getting hurt all the time. They're also taking a beating mentally, I think. And this is something really important to talk about. I think about the pressure that these guys are under, and we just expect them to be perfect all the time. It doesn't make any sense. I love that we're starting to see, well, we're more than starting to see, we're seeing, I think, a really big shift, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, it seems like, because we went through a period where it was like it became okay to talk about mental health issues if you had a concussion. That was the only way that it was okay for a while.
Right.
I mean, Rob, do you agree with that? Was that similar to what you observed?
Yep. Yeah, if it was associated with a concussion, it's like, oh, okay, that's a brain injury, mental health, brain injury. We can wrap our minds around that, but
right, if it's okay to have a problem if somebody physically destroyed you, but you cannot just have a problem from being in the situation or how much high pressure it is. And you think about people in their everyday lives, they have pressure themselves, but they're not on a national stage being judged by everybody and possibly having their livelihood taken away, right, playing a game that is very rough on their bodies and their minds, and nobody's talking about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They are now, thankfully, but they weren't then.
No, not at all. I mean, just think about this, guys. Well, we have 2 comedians, so maybe the comedians can actually relate to this more than you think you can. As a comedian, standing in front of a crowd, whether it's 500 or 5,000, you are getting instantaneous feedback as to whether or not you're doing a good job at your job. And some people might throw tomatoes at you. Now with social media, people might troll you or say something underneath your post. So you all can relate to the amount of scrutiny, right? Juxtapose that to like an accountant or director of marketing or somebody in a corporation, even a doctor. I mean, there's consumer reviews, but most people aren't getting chopped up at their day job 24/7. So imagine that. And then the fact that, so we play our games on Sundays, right? We're off Monday, we go in, you got to lift, you got to get your treatment. Every Tuesday on the Tuesday, they would bring in a new crop of talent, free agents. You would see them. So if you're in the training room or watching film on the opponent who were playing that week, you would see 4 to 8 people, guys ready to go, ready to literally eat your lunch, because they want a spot on that roster every Tuesday for 17 weeks straight, not to even count who's coming in the offseason. And there's only so many spots on the team. So that type of pressure, it's 53 spots, right? 53 spots on the active roster, game day roster, I should say. You don't know, unless you're a locked-in starter, you're a free agent like me, you don't know if you don't know how you're going to feature, you don't know if you have a job next week. So you work your whole life. Like, people make it to the NFL don't just start playing football in college. People make it to the NFL by and large start at 7, 8 years old. So do the math. 7, 8 years old. It shows up at 21, 22, 23, depending upon if you got redshirted, you got held back. They got holdbacks nowadays. That's a big thing. We'll get into that another time. But me, I was 23 years old. It took me 15 years from the time I said this is what I want to do to it showing up, and in 4 years, it was over. And every week of those 4 years, every day of those 4 years was very, very stressful. Up here, not to mention, to Dr. Dan's point, the fact that I can't sleep on my shoulders, either of them, without my hands and my fingers going numb, despite the fact that my knees and hips and great toes, you know about my foot, you know about the great toe, Edgar. It doesn't bend; it's arthritic. You know about the Achilles, Edgar, because we're doing our walks. I'm like, God, you're like, just it's mind body. Just you got to do the Dr. Dan treatment, and
see Dr. Dan?
You got to block it out. I'm like, man, I need to talk to Dr. Dan because this thing feel like it's about to pop. I'm trying to ignore it.
It's funny, Rob, but actually, I can help you with that even faster than I can help you with anything. Just mental.
Funny.
That's the stuff that I can really help you with. Awesome. But I also heard that you're telling me that I'm too late for a football career because I'm past 7.
Listen, I want to be like the Puerto Rican Kurt Warner and just come out of a grocery store and become a quarterback. I could do that.
Let me ask you a question, Rob.
Yeah.
What years did you play? What are the years?
04 through 07, and then 08 in the brigade.
All right, so
so you in the same draft class as that where Eli and Big Ben went, right?
Yeah,
Philip Rivers draft.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I'm gonna act like I know what you guys are talking about.
Let
me ask you a question, Rob, because you 04, right? So how hard was it if you were a player back then and you were going through something like that mentally, mental health was? How hard was it for you to step out and admit it, knowing that you had all these guys that were dying for your job? And how are these guys nowadays doing it?
See, back then, there was admit what, there was no conversation, Edgar. There was no thought. And for me, if I never even thought to utter how hard it was to my wife, not even my wife, because it's like, how could you make all the sacrifices that you made over this amount of time, get there and complain about it? Because to me, in my mind, that landed as a complaint. Like, just do the work. This is your dream. This is what you dreamt of since you were a kid. Don't you know how many millions of young boys want to do what you're doing? So you don't have the right to complain. Do you know you're getting paid to play a game? So nobody cares. Nobody cares how you feel. Now, to the second part of your question, these days, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I think that still is the pervasive ideology. I think that the onesies and twosies, as Eric mentioned earlier, the few guys that came out and talked about mental health, there's a bunch of barbershops and bars and chats of guys calling those guys some bad names.
Mm-hmm.
It is not so grossly widely accepted that as a professional athlete and you raise your hand or you tap your helmet and say, Coach, I need a minute. I need a mental break. I need some help. That people are like, you know what? That's a man move. There's we're not there yet. I hope that we can get there though, guys. I really do.
Well, I don't think we're there, but I will say that we're in a climate now where it's not looked at by a weakness by all. And at least now you have some sympathetic ears. In 03, 04, you had no sympathetic ears. I remember one of the starting linemen, I think for the 49ers, when they went to the Super Bowl, or was the Raiders, I forgot who it was, he went AWOL, and he disappeared for 3 days because he had a mental breakdown. And he literally disappeared from the team, and it's killing me. I don't remember the name, but I just remember how he was just so degraded and talked about on sports radio, and like, you know, how could you not be there for your team, and you know, keep your shit together. I'm like, are you fucking serious? At least now they can feel at least a little comfortable. I do agree with this one thing, Rob. We're talking about A.J. Brown, star wide receiver. We're talking about Calvin Ridley, star wide receiver. We're talking Lane Johnson, starting lineman on a Super Bowl team. If we were talking about the punter, would he be as comfortable coming out and talking about it because he knows his team will, Calvin Ridley knows he has a job, whether he says he has to do this or not because of his talent and because of the name on the jersey. Do you think guys that aren't as good would be less likely to talk about it than these guys?
It would 100% be less likely because it's a risk, a payoff kind of thing, and when you do the math on that, if you're Robb Davon-Butler undrafted out of Robert Morris, you're not gonna say anything. You're as a matter of fact, on the entrance physical for the team, and the doctors are pushing on your joints and moving your toe joints back and forth and doing x-rays, and it hurts like all get out. You're
not gonna say anything then either.
Mm-hmm.
I bit my lip almost off and swallowed it during the Kansas City Chief entrance physical. They saw something on the x-rays, came to take a closer look. They grabbed my toes like this and was going back and forth like not they're arthritic. They have hallux rigidus. There's calcium deposits in the joint, and it doesn't bend. This is the range of motion, the natural range of motion. This right here, and the doctor goes here and how's that?
Wow,
a little tight there. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I need that contract.
Going along with that, let me add something else to the mix just to see what you guys think, and Rob, you especially with that direct experience. It also seems to me that in addition to societal judgment about it, there's judgment that the people have towards themselves in certain ways, or maybe even a fear of even letting that in the door at all. It's like you don't want to go to war and be like, let in that there's fear. You just don't want to. Right. You just don't want to do it. And so that's another thing I wonder. Do you think that can ever change, or is that something that is so embedded in football, this mindset of don't even let yourself go there?
I think what has become, and I don't even know if it was a recent phenomenon. I mean, you guys, have you heard the story about Ronnie Lott cutting his finger off in the actual game?
On national game, he cut off his pinky, I believe.
It's like you just cut it off.
Not the whole thing, just just the end of it, not the whole thing, but
the end of it. That's right.
Yeah, the end of it.
So to this day, it's a nub, and he made a decision in the moment.
Why did he do this though? Why? I never heard of this.
Because
it was hurt, right? He was hurt at the time, and he thought he would play. It was fucking with his ability to play, right?
It was hanging off. So he made a play, and it had broke, and it was hanging off. He's like, what are we going to do? He said, just cut the thing off. That's how, that's how tough the mentality is of people who play this game. And so I say that to say this, Dr. Nat. I think that what's accepted is that if you're hurt, you play. If you're injured and you can walk and run, you play. Only if you're injured and you physically cannot run, you have no mobility, is it okay for you to, especially in a big game, during the regular season, early in the season, take a couple weeks off. But a big game of playoffs, you got to get back. You got to get back in there, kid.
So let me make a point going along with that. I work with mind-body issues, as you guys know. One of the reasons that there are so many mind-body issues is just what you described. It is not okay for people to be hurt unless it's physical. And the mind knows this. So what does it do if you need a break? It makes you hurt physically. It goes right there. It says, you need to sit down. And this is the only way we're going to get it done. So your body is listening to your mind. And it's like, I'm shutting this down. I see it happen all the time. I watch games. Something bad happens to somebody in some way, and they get hurt. And I'm not saying that injuries don't happen, because of course they do. And in fact, in football, they happen all the time. Right. But at the same time, if you are getting worn down mentally, and there's no way out, no acceptable way out for you except a physical injury, you do run the risk of getting injured in a way that comes from the psychology.
I never thought of that. Wow. Listeners, you're getting free game right now from Dr. Dan. I mean,
I know, right? I just tell jokes, man. I just tell jokes, man. I can't heal nobody. I can make you laugh. Laughter heals
is the best medicine.
It really does. Now, let me ask you, when you were a player, how would you have reacted if one of your teammates said, "Listen, I can't go in the game, man. I'm dealing with depression. It's fucking with me. I can't play today." How do you think? I mean, it's probably hard to go retroactively to how you would react, because it probably feels like a lifetime ago. But if you can project yourself back there, how do you think you would have reacted?
Someone says that to me back in 04, 05, 06, 07. And I go, dude, I can't go this week. I'm dealing with depression. I'm probably going to react like this. What? What the F? What do you mean? What does that even mean? What are you talking about? Explain. Well, I'm not feeling like myself. I'm feeling down. It's like we're first of all, we're guys. Okay. Like there are several layers of numbing agents that occur. Like, we're guys right off the rip. We weren't really trained or reared with emotional intelligence or the ability to manage our emotions and not make them mean anything about us, but just analyze them as indicators as to what's going on below the surface. So, Eric, I would have been like, whose man's is this? Like, how did you make this team being so weak-minded? I'm just being honest. How did you get this far being so weak-minded? That would have been my default reaction.
That's interesting, because I'm pretty sure that's still happening right now. That's why I got to give credits to these athletes who actually step forward, because it's not only dealing with the mental, but making sure you don't get hurt, knowing there's other people like this ready for that job. You know the amount of pressure these guys got to be in. So I can't get hurt. Even if I get hurt, I gotta play, because I gotta make this money, because there's these hungry kids, boom, 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 trying to be on me.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's. I mean, I could only imagine how bad it was then, and what these guys are taking, the heat that these guys are taking now for it. You know what I'm saying?
And this is why I think sometimes you hear about it after their careers. They play through their whole careers, and then they're like, okay, now I can say it. Or take Calvin Ridley. This guy didn't suddenly get depressed or, whatever he's struggling with. He's had it for a while. I mean, I'm a therapist. I know these things. Yeah. This is the first time maybe he felt safe enough to do it. Julio Jones isn't there. He's the number one wide receiver. He's a huge talent. He can finally do it.
Yeah.
And this shows.
I think the climate changed a lot, Dan. I mean, since you came into the league 04, you said, right?
Yeah.
So think about it. In that time, I mean, there was a time mental health was looked at it as a weakness. Now people actually respect how powerful it is, how debilitating it can be, and most people just didn't feel that way about mental health. They just thought, "Suck it up, you're rich. Shut up, probably." You know what I mean? What the fuck's your problem? And now people understand that it is a disease. It's not something that somebody could just shake off. It's not a bad mood. It's not. It's not nothing small. They're finally treating it the way it's supposed to be treated. You know what I mean? So now, I mean, there's a reason why men they binge drink like 5 times more than women do, because it's self-medicating, because we don't like to deal with our feelings. So how do we deal with our feelings? Throw them back. Then you don't have to feel nothing. Because we'd rather do that than talk. So, I think now at least these guys have the ability to talk. I still say if it was the punter, I don't think he would have been as comfortable, Dan. I don't. I think like you said, if it wasn't Calvin Ridley and the team needed you, I wonder how comfortable that player would be.
Yeah, I mean, I even think back to like when Terry Bradshaw talked about depression. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was way out in front of that. He didn't do it during his playing career, but he did it afterwards. And I remember, and I've always been a very psychologically minded person. I wasn't a therapist yet when I first heard about that. But I remember thinking, and I think this is a key point for why people are so slow to share it with the public. The perception of people, I mean, I just thought, this is Terry Bradshaw. He won 4 Super Bowls. He's like one of the greatest of all time. How could he possibly be depressed? And I didn't even mean it judgmentally.
Right.
I just meant it like, I'm surprised. I wouldn't have expected it. Thinking about it now, that's ridiculous. It doesn't matter who you are. Yeah. It's the human condition to struggle with these things. And the sooner we get to that, the better.
Can I ask you a question, Dr. Dan? What do you think these guys are going through right now? Like these athletes, these NFL players now, what they're dealing with now. Like what I guess the question would be like, what damage are they doing to themselves, not dealing with their mental issues and dealing with all the injuries and the pressure that comes with the game? And, like what are they doing, like the ones that are not talking, the ones that are afraid to talk because of the consequences that come with it?
Well, it's a great question, but I'm going to answer it in a way that might surprise you. I think it's less what are they doing to themselves in doing this the process of being in the NFL, and more the fact that the way the NFL is and the way our society is a symptom of the problem. Mm. There were so many people that were headed in this direction anyway, whether there was the NFL or not. Mm-hmm. The NFL just shows us, and I give the NFL some credit for starting to adjust. It's a little bit hesitant because the NFL really only does these things when they're forced to. As far as I can tell, they I'm not saying that they're bad or anything, but it's a big thing to take on. I would love to see an organization protect their players more, and from a personal standpoint, the leagues that I love most tend to do that more. But you see this across the board in sports, and I think Eric's point is an important one. We are seeing a big culture of change. There were some big tennis stars that withdrew from big matches because they were just like, I can't handle it. The thing that I think I would say in response to your question primarily, Edgar, aside from saying that this is a symptom of the overall thing, is, and I really want to encourage everybody about this, it's never too late. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. If you can learn to value yourself, then you're going to do it, no matter what happens. You could even say to yourself, listen, yeah, this is a dream of mine, but is it really worth it to put myself through that and not honor who I am at all? And honestly, your point, Eric, is a good one about punters. The sooner the punters start saying this, the better. We need long snappers saying this. And these guys also, in addition to how hard this all is, the pressure is enormous. It's like what Rob said. Most people don't have a job where you get an instantaneous response from a huge amount of people, and there is no empathy for these people, generally speaking. None. And you see this with celebrities, too. They do have it great in certain ways, but we don't know what that's like. We need to listen to them and also imagine. Try to put yourself in their shoes and think this is a real person. It's kind of like road rage. we lose the sense of the actual person. And I think the NFL has to do, they got to step up here, as do all the other major sports organizations, and start treating people like people. And that's where I thought that this, interview with Jay Glazer and Lane Johnson was really important. The more we have discussions like that, the better. We have to see them as people. And to me, the brutality of what they go through mentally is almost worse than what they go through physically. I feel a little weird saying that, Rob, because you know the physicality of it. That's not said to disavow how brutal it is physically. It's said to show you just how brutal it is mentally.
Yeah. And I wonder, it's just not the NFL. I'm pretty sure NBA, made the baseball, hockey. They all go through this. You know what I'm saying? And it's crazy how, like Rob said, it starts when you're little.
But there's a certain machismo stigma that's more on football than any other sport. Because I remember there was a basketball player. He was so depressed he couldn't get on a plane. So if you wanted to draft him, he could only take the bus. And there were certain teams that were willing to try to draft this guy because he was that good. And it's killing me that I don't remember his name. But he was very open about his issues with mental illness. Kevin Love came out way before anybody in the NFL was talking about it. There was a couple cats in baseball that also talked about it. There's something about football because it's considered a gladiator sport, a manly sport, if you will. And men in general don't like talking about their mental health. The stuff I looked up this week, of all the men that reported experiencing anxiety and depression, only like 38% sought help. Think about it. That's the everyday guy. Can you imagine how much worse it is for someone that's in the spotlight? Like, he can't even feel his toes. When you step on the dog dung, do you still feel it? Even though you I'm just curious, because I know maybe that's why it's still a good day, because you have no idea what you stepped on, right? Because you're that jacked up. You're like, I could have stepped on Cottonelle. I don't know. But what do you think about, right, Dr. Den? Does that sound about right? Because literally less than half less than half the people that need it ask for it. As far if they're men,
there's no question. And you know what? Again, not to always bring it back to the mind-body stuff, but I find that much more often than not, people are in our society, they're so unwilling to even get the help or even know about their own problems. They will just transfer it into mind-body issues. This is why we have an epidemic of pain. We have 100 million people suffering from pain in the United States. And that doesn't, if you factor out kids, you're talking like at least 40% of the entire population with chronic pain. And what it really is they're having pain in their minds that is becoming very real in the body.
Right.
And the fact is, people are not admitting it. I was thinking, though, about why the NFL more than others, and I think Rob, with his insight into this, shed some light on that for me. I had thought about this before, but hearing it directly from you really helps. If you think about the other leagues aren't leagues where you can be replaced as easily. I feel like there's something in the NFL, and this, by the way, is very devastating from a mental standpoint.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good to be replaceable. But, if LeBron James is feeling depressed, they're not going to be like, well, next man up, you lost your job.
Right.
That's not going to happen. The NBA, they have 13 players on that roster, or 15, I can't remember what. And it's just not like that. In the NFL, there are guys clawing to be the long snapper, anything to get on that field.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. I did find a report that was done, and it appeared. It was in the digest for. No, here we go. It was published by the Journal of Clinical Sports Psychology, and they did a study. They've actually followed NFL players for a period of 2 years, just to kind of see what their views on mental health were. Now, again, this is an older study, but some of these things I wanted to run by Rob as a former player to see if they ring true. Beyond the stigma attached to mental health, their biggest reasons for not seeking help were that they believed the counseling wouldn't be kept confidential and that it would hurt their careers. And they had limited knowledge of the services available from the NFL and the NFL Players Association for mental health. As a former player, do those things ring true to you?
No, I never had the thought that things wouldn't be confidential because I process things differently. If it's a physical ailment in my mind, I'm going to go to the trainer. And if I have a legitimate thing that needs some ice and stem or some treatment and some rehab, I'm going to go to the trainer. When I go back in retrospect, if I had a mental thing that I was cognizant or conscious of, it wouldn't have occurred to me to bring that up to the team doctor. It occurs for me that I would have talked to my wife. We would have sought therapists outside of the team using the network. Now, I can understand why somebody would have that perspective, especially if it's a household name, right? If it's a player who sells their jerseys in the in the gift shop at the stadium, then they're probably feeling like everybody knows who I am. But as an undrafted free agent, I can walk into the stadium and have the stadium wouldn't know who I was without my helmet on. So I didn't have that same feeling of celebrity, if you will, Eric. So I'm coming from a little to unknown player's perspective. That being said, I didn't have the fear about word getting out from that in that regard. But I can see if I was LaDainian Tomlinson or Drew Brees or Phillip Rivers, I probably would, Antonio Gates, I would probably look at it like the way you just described.
But were you made available? Were there programs available then? Was there education about it? Like was it mentioned in the rookie symposium type stuff? Yeah.
So rookie symposium was by and large focused on financial literacy and not getting STDs. Those were the two main topics.
I'm all for both of that. I support those wholeheartedly. I want to go to that symposium.
Yeah.
So no discussion of mental health at all.
That is crazy.
No.
That is crazy. I don't care about your knee. Just don't no STDs, please.
Listen. You can be fucking. You could cry on the field. Just don't get herpes. That's what we're telling you.
Let me ask you a question, Rob and Dr. Dan. I think with this generation, with these new millennials, I think eventually it'll come out more and more where mental health will be brought out more and more as we go with the years, right? But I think like when you were young, Rob, when you were playing football and young, do you think it comes from your parent, your father, as having a kid who's really good in football? Do you think the parents push you more, because mental health wasn't that? Then he talk about that back then, and you have a kid and you got him in sports and you push him as hard as they can. So you tell him you can't cry, you got to be tough. You getting him ready for what's to come. And it was worse back then than it is now.
Oh man, you're gonna get me into some deep stuff now. Good job, Edgar, getting into the. All right, so full disclosure, I went to my parents and asked them to sign me up for football. Okay. In the projects, my dad had already left when I was 2, but he was around, and so I went to one of my buddies came to me and he said, "Man, you're really fast. You should play football." I was 6 or 7 years old, so I go to my mom. I beg her to sign up. It's like $30 at the time. Now it's like $700 to sign up. Talk about inflation. So she signs me up. Now they got to get me cleats. They got to get me arm guards because somehow I ended up on the line. I'm wearing number 63. I'm 7 years old. I'm terrible. I don't know anything about this game, but I have potential because I'm really fast and strong. I'm tough. Then fast forward the next year, I score 40 touchdowns in 9 games. And I tell my dad I want to play in the NFL. Now the proud father thing becomes a dynamic that I hadn't experienced up until this point in life. And to see my dad beaming with pride and hearing other players' parents talk about how good his son was. Man, that's my boy. That's my boy. Mind you, I was already in the gifted program for academics. So I don't recall any celebratory chest bumps about the straight A's that I was getting and being in the gifted program. But once I put on the helmet and cleats, my brothers, and I was scoring touchdowns, I'm not saying that this is not a shot. It's just the facts of my life at that time. And so, yes, there was, that started there, and then became an expectation that I was going to perform, to the point where I would score literally 5 touchdowns, all right, run for 378 yards, all right, miss 2 tackles. And at the end of the day, it's like, man, what happened on the tackle, Butts? The tackle. Dad, dude, I ran for 5 touchdowns, actually 7, 2 got called back, 378 yards, and you talking about the tackles? That was a thing that I had to get complete with, because that inadequacy, that not being strong enough or being weak, not being good enough, that thing was a thing that was in my blind spot for 23 years beyond that moment. So it wasn't until I was 30 until I had the conversation with my dad, and I said, man, why do you always ride me, man? Like, you were proud, and then you would ride me. I couldn't tell if you was proud, but every time I talked to somebody else, they'd be like, your dad's so proud of you, you really didn't, show that to me after you expected it. And he said, son, man, we cried. He said, son, my intention was never to make you feel the way you're describing that you felt. And I never knew that you felt this way. He said, the reason why I was hard on you is because I saw who you were. The reason why I didn't chest bump when you made straight A's is because you were a genius to me. The reason why I pointed out the 2 tackles is because you're better than that. And I had to really okay, I can receive that. I can accept that from you, Dad, from your disposition. Let me share with you the impact on me. And that's what brought him to tears. And that's when we got complete with one another. And that's when I was able to let go of the perfection, this sort of perfectionist complex, because it was eating me alive, guys.
It's crazy. And I ask you that question because I know a lot of parents and a lot of fathers that have their kids that play sports, and like they push them, just like what you did. Perfect example, and it's crazy, because you got to talk to your kids. It's okay to push them. It's okay to find out how they are mentally deep down inside, because, you're just blocking them, really, if you think about it. Right, Dr. Dan?
Oh, absolutely.
Throw you around, little bus.
Absolutely. But, I also want to say, Rob, first of all, thank you for sharing such a personal and important story. That's so much of who you came to be. But it also really illustrates something important, and I think it's exactly what we're talking about here. It's exactly why we have this show. In the end, no matter what your trajectory was, in the end, you just wanted to be a human being who was valued for you. That's what everybody wants. And these guys who are going through the NFL, they're like going through this bubble, I'm imagining, since I obviously haven't been there, but I'm imagining that they're going through this bubble, and it's generally only afterwards that they're like, wait, what just happened? They don't get to process that. We've got to start building that in society in general. Yeah. We have to start building it, not just, as I said, not just with sports, but in general. We have to be empathic to people and inviting of them to get to that point earlier, where we can have the real discussion of who are you really, what's hurting versus what's not. You see people whose parents get really into the sports career, and sometimes these kids don't even want to do it. They're just like, oh, I got to do it. I don't want to disappoint. It is so powerful, the wish to be approved of. We're so hungry for it. We'll do anything for it.
Listen,
and
I was really comedian, I agree with you. As a comedian, being accepted, being loved is everything as a comedian. Even though you don't see parents take their kids to the comedy clubs at 7 to try to get them to tell jokes.
That's my boy.
That's my boy.
You know what I mean? We're not that extreme, but.
Right.
30 seconds of silence, Eric. 30 seconds of silence.
Listen,
complete laughter. All.
Give me a type 5. I'm 5 years old.
If you guys get on stage and you get a concussion up there, maybe people will cheer you more.
Well, I wish, sometimes I wish that mental health was visually evident in some way that it could be respected. Somebody sees a broken foot, everybody can understand a broken foot. Nobody could see depression unless they've been through depression. Nobody can see anxiety unless they know what it is to feel anxious. You know what I mean? To that extent. So it's like it's almost it's like they can't even explain their pain because the world can't see it, because they can't even explain it themselves. It's easier. Sometimes I think it's easier to break a leg than to have your mind broken, because at least it's evident and you know it'll heal. The mind, it just.
Well, here's the other thing, Eric. To piggyback off that, sometimes people don't even know they're having a problem when it comes to, when people are depressed, they have a viewpoint that things are bad, but they don't think that they're like seeing it unrealistically. They're like, I'm seeing it as bad because it is bad.
Right.
So there's there's a thing where people can't even tell what's going on with themselves. Whereas if you break your leg, you try to walk on it, that's not going to work. It's just very clear.
It's that clear. And I'll also add to that, guys, that I think that I want us to be more mindful as a society of judging and assessing in a negative way behaviors that are indicators of something being off. You talked about drinking earlier, self-medication, especially for us guys. There's all kind of harmful behaviors. It doesn't always show itself as a harmful behavior. I know that all mental illness doesn't show itself as a harmful behavior on the outside, but when you're around your loved ones and your friends and your close inner circle, and you're seeing pathologies or patterns of things that are seem to be self-medicating in nature, and you ask a question, what's really going on? Like really be the space to empathize and listen and hear what's going on, because you literally can save someone's life by redirecting them. And so versus saying that person is X, or that person is stupid, that person is promiscuous, that person is a drunk, that person is a gambling addict, that person's what is really going on beneath the surface? These things are just indicators, red flags maybe, but instead of casting the person aside and deeming them unworthy of love and care.
I think that's great, Rob. And I'll also add, sometimes people, even if they are not judged, what often happens is then their families are judged. They're like, oh, they're messed up, because of whatever happened in their families.
That's a fact.
And I mean, I think that's what happens a lot of times in society, especially with Black culture. From what I can see, there's a huge amount of judgment about things. Yeah. And I love that you said that in general, that because that's the thing we need, is we need to reduce judgment. I mean, think about it. Edgar, I think you were saying something about one of the athletes when they came out with this. And I was thinking it is similar to when people are gay and they come out, because they're so worried about what the effect will be. Mm-hmm. And understandably so. And you know why? It's all because of judgment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If we weren't such a judgmental society, we would all be so much better off. The number one thing I'd want to get rid of is the judgment.
Dan, I got to tell you, Doc, I mean, this you hit the nail on the head. You know that study I was talking about the percentage of men that actually seek help for their depression or anxiety. 49% of men experiencing depression have said they feel more depressed than they admit to their loved ones and the people in their lives. So that means even when they're sharing, they're lying about the extent of the depression and anxiety they're dealing with. And that has everything to do with judgment. And it has to be multiplied by 1,000 if you're playing professional sports, or you're an athlete, or you're a singer or a dancer. An everyday man, half of them are lying about how depressed they are, even though they're telling them they're depressed, but not how much. We got to get that judgment out.
I think one way to change it is for those brothers out there who are parents, those brothers out there who have kids who are, coming up in the sports, talk to your kids. Find out how your kids are doing mentally. You know what I'm saying? Because I think it's implied since our childhood, especially if your father wants you to be that big baseball player, football player. You know what I'm saying? So I think as parents, I think we need to talk to our kids. And I'll ask you this, Rob, because you were a professional player and you have your sons play football. So seeing how your father was with you, how are you with them now playing the game,
Gosh, I knew it was coming. I'm gonna answer that question and have a comment. I was a carbon copy of my dad in a lot of ways. I I'm not proud of it. And especially after my dad shared with me his occurrence, like his context for which he was doing what he was doing. I weaponized it as like, oh, now I could just say to my sons, I'm saying this to you, or I'm hard on you because I see you for who you really are. I see you as better than you know yourself to be. So I expect you to make that play. I'm exonerated, vindicated of any wrongdoing because I've already teed it up. My dad didn't tee me up. He just kind of did it. At least I'm teeing my boys up.
I was thinking about that, Rob, because I was thinking about I don't know what you think about this, but I'm just feeling like, and I'm not saying this critically of your dad. It's hard to be a dad. It's hard to get these things right. I'm sure that he meant well with that. There are even good things in what he did say.
Sure.
But I'm just imagining, what do you think it would have been like if he had said to you, oh man, I missed an opportunity there. I missed an opportunity to tell you how great you were doing in this unbelievable way. And yeah, I took my eye off the ball. I was not seeing what that would mean to you. But you were amazing. I mean, imagine if we were saying these kinds of things to our kids.
He eventually got there.
Good.
In the conversation, he eventually got there. Inside that same conversation, he shared with me that, man. He shared with me that I'm the fulfillment of everything that he wanted to be as a man, and that he was so incredibly proud of how I conducted myself as a young man in the classroom, on the field, as a father, as a husband, as a leader. And he eventually, because at first his response is natural as human, it was a little defensive. I was just telling you who you were for me, Then it got down to, man, you got to understand something. I passed you the torch, and you took it someplace I couldn't take it. You're everything I wanted to be. You're everything. Like you inspire me. I'm your father, but you inspire me to be a better version of myself. So you're right. We got there. He didn't leave with it, but we got there.
Well, and that's what's most important. You got there, and that's the gold of it right there. I mean, I know from personal experience, having had no father from birth, how much these things would mean. If my father could come back from the dead and tell me what he thought of me, and it was that kind of gold, I wouldn't trade it for anything except my daughters. So I'm glad you got that.
Yeah, I'm glad so too. Thank you for sharing that, man. I just think that as parents, as fathers, we should say that to our kids every Sunday.
Right.
No matter what no matter what.
No matter whether they scored, no matter whether they mess up, no matter whether it's a fumble, you should say that to your kids. And we're here right now because we feel men don't talk. We're here right now because we don't know how to deal with our mental health. We don't know how to share. We don't know because we got that stigma of we got to be tough. Crying is a sign of weakness and all this bull. So the way to change this is talk to your kids now. Make sure you're that father. You set the role, you set the example, you that big, strong dude, but at the same time, find out how your kids are doing. Don't hesitate. Don't be the carbon copy, which is crazy, because that's the carbon copy that messed you up and fucked you up as a kid. But now here you are, and you're like, wow, I'm doing the same thing to my kids. So we as men could change the men of tomorrow if we start right now. So tell your kids, how good they doing. Even when they fuck up, tell them how proud you are of them. Find out what's really happening up here. I think as parents, as fathers, we want them to play, but we don't care. Nobody wants to hear because we didn't go through it. My father never came up to me and said, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? How are you mentally? Is anything bothering you? And even if my father would have did that to me when I was a kid, I probably would have still hesitated. I would have been like,
it would be like the NFL.
I'm not falling for this shit.
Like,
no way.
Nobody's taking my job.
Yeah.
It's-
But that's how I feel. Like, we're here right now as four brothers talking, telling all the brothers out there that it's okay to talk, that it's okay to express yourself, it's okay to vent out, find someone to talk to. But when it comes to the new generation, to tomorrow's future, we gotta do it with our kids. We gotta take our kids. We gotta talk to our kids. Be proud of your kids, no matter what. Get to know your kids. That's the thing that we lack of, because you're thinking about the big picture, but you don't know what you're doing, So history keeps repeating itself. So we gotta come to an end and say, okay, now I'm gonna change this.
I just want
Not
to say,
just with sports, with everything.
yeah, and Edgar, I think you hit the nail on the head there, because you said a particular thing that I want to highlight, and that's, I don't remember exactly what you said, but to paraphrase it, value your kid no matter what, the way they are. See, we were talking about getting judgment out of there.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that, and I think that one of the reasons that society has so much judgment is because of fear. We are afraid to let people be who they are. And when we raise kids, we're especially afraid to let our kids be who they are, because we think, well, maybe the world won't accept them. But in a way, that's underselling our kids. What we need to think is, if the world doesn't accept them, something's wrong with the world. This kid is great. This kid is great just as they are. And that's what I do concentrate on. I talk to my girls about it. I don't want them to be any different than they are at all. Like, I seriously don't. And that I what I'm hoping, and I really think is the case, and I'm seeing the fruits of that, is they don't feel judged, because I'm not judging them.
Yeah, nice, good way to put it, Dr. Dan. Man, this conversation could go on for another 2 hours. I was thinking about all the segments that we.
This is why I don't have kids, because I don't have to. I'm not responsible. So y'all three need to do your job, so that. All right, so that I don't have to yell at these kids to get off my lawn in 30 years. All right, and treat me with respect.
First we got to get you a lawn. You live in New York. You don't have a lawn.
Oh, listen, not for long, bro. Not for long. I'm telling you, I'm leaving as soon as I can. Yo, Rob, all the stuff you shared with your pops, that conversation, that was like Field of Dreams moment right there.
That was a walk in the walk right there. We
yeah,
didn't get to
man.
introduce that
thank
segment,
you for
but
walking.
you definitely.
Thank you for walking the walk with us. That was, that was very Field of Dreams. I was like, Dad, can I have a catch moment? So,
No doubt.
dead up. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing.
That.
Definitely, man.
I didn't expect to walk that way. I had a different one in mind. That one kind of came organically. The comment that I want to make is, man, it was right there. It'll come back to me. It's gonna come back to me. Regarding, oh yes, it was shifting. Machismo in the manosphere is always going to be a thing, right? But the definition of machismo is in dire need of some reframing. Like, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a man's man needs to be reframed, rewritten, right? To be a man's man, having emotional intelligence is something that should be a requisite. Being a master communicator should be a requisite. Having self-mastery and self-discipline over your emotions and versus being your emotions, especially anger, and fear and judgment, shame and guilt. Like, these things, softer skills. So I say soft, like, we could just turn soft skills into hard skills if you want. I don't care what we need to do.
That's what we got to do. We need to rebrand it.
We need to rebrand it. Jedi mind trick ourselves to be more conscious and more enlightened in the world. Let me give you an example of that, because I shared with you how I was with my sons. That was an example, that carbon copy. When they were little, I was like that. When they got in high school, I had more consciousness. My daughter went out for a student council. They were choosing 3 kids in every 4th grade class. I mean, this kid rehearsed her speech 100 times, maybe 101 times. She made a poster. We went to Michael's, got all kinds of crap, made a beautiful poster, 2 posters, campaign posters. She's very popular. She is one of 4 kids who look like her in the 4th grade, the entire 4th grade. But that's neither here nor there. That's just to give you guys some context. Long story short, she does her thing, and she didn't get it. So I picked her up from school. How'd it go? she told me about it, you know, who got it, and she was strong. She was strong in front of Daddy. She was strong, I should say, in front of Daddy.
Well said.
Yeah, she was strong in front of Daddy. You know, she came home and she got with Mom, and she boo-hooed her baby brown eyes out. And I was like, wow, I knew she was upset. I knew she was disappointed, but I know she was that hurt. And the thing that she kept saying is, I wasted all that time. I worked so hard, and I did well on my presentation. I did well on my speech. I don't understand, Mommy. I don't understand. And so I let her have, you know, I just, sometimes we want to run in and say, stop crying. Let me get you some tissue. I said, no. The old me would do that. The new me is like, let her get all of that out. Every ounce, every drop. Let it flow. This is my baby too. Like, I won't tell you what I do about my baby, but you can get the picture. You got daughters, you know, you get the picture. Dr. Daniel, so you get the picture. So I pulled her to the side after she got done flushing, and I said, I want you to know how truly proud I am of you. You know how much courage it took for you to write the speech, practice the speech, invested time after your homework was complete at 11:30 at night to do the poster, deliver this speech, and stand up in front of all those people and tell them what you're going to do for them as student council. I'm proud of you for going through raising your hand and going through the process. To me, you already won. That was the win. Having its vision, that was the win. You doing the work was the win, not you getting nominated. So go get them next year when it's time to do the 5th grade deal. And still try to help out as much as you can. She just gave me the biggest hug and a kiss. Love you too, Daddy. Thank you so much. It was just, that's machismo, people. That is machismo.
Yes, that's a good rebranding of it, and it's totally right on. And it also is great because it puts everything else to the side except who is this person and how can I admire who they actually are. You're right. She had won. She wins by just being her.
Yeah.
She went for it. She took a shot. She took a shot. You know?
And it brings me to that point on how us as men, as fathers, we have that machismo, right? And look, our kids would not come up to us, even how much, you know, like she'll tell you, okay, yeah, and then she went to Mom and she rented out. And this is what we need to do, brothers. This is what we need. This is how we need to change the men that we are. Yeah. So our kids could be better men to their kids, and it goes forward and it pays forward. Because no matter how cool you are with them, a little girl's always going to choose Mom. But the same thing could go with a little boy as well. You know, I remember when I was a kid, my father was so tough. I couldn't go up to my father and tell him. I think my mom was the one. Mommy was the savior. You know, Mommy was the one that'd be like, boom. You know, so we need to change that machismo. We need to open up with our kids and be proud of them, man. Thank you, Rob. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. I mean, like I said, this topic, we could go another 2 hours on here. You know, I mean, all those segments went out the window, but I think we got a good point across. Wouldn't you say, Dr. Dan?
I think it was even better than anything we could have planned because we got into the real emotion of it. You know, Rob, we got the background of what it's like to be an NFL player and that insight, but we also got your personal experience, not only as a parent but also as a son, and it captures so much. But let me say this, just in terms of what it is we're doing here on this show and whether it works. My kids will go to my wife also, but they do come to me. They come to me all the time because I am doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that not to brag, but just say it works.
Yeah.
It works. They know that I'm safe. They know that I do value them for exactly who they are, and I fight like hell for that.
Yeah.
Nice, man.
That's machismo.
Machismo. The new machismo.
Now it sounds like a cologne.
Yeah, right?
Machismo, Calvin
man. Hug your daughters. Machismo.
Hug your sons. Oh
Hug
yeah,
your
the
sons.
little girls always get the hugs. The little girls always get the attention. Hug your sons, man. Hug your sons.
Listen,
because
if you're telling me I have a son, this is a totally different show. We've totally gone off the rails here. I was under the impression I had none, and you're like, yo, hug your son. You're
I'm not just
scaring me.
talking to you. I'm talking to everyone.
Okay, I'm talking to Bell. Yeah, okay. Like, hey,
I'm talking into the camera to every
Because
brother out there.
I know Edgar was just in town this weekend. Maybe somebody told him something, and I don't know.
Nah, man. But thank you, Rob. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Eric, for bringing up the topic, and thank you, Dr. Dan, for your knowledge, man. I'm glad that as brothers, I mean, we're about to wrap up this first season of Brothers in Arms. Next week will be our last episode for the complete season. We'll come back in January. But I'm very proud of what we've done so far. You know, I'm very proud of the message that we're trying to, spread and let men know that, yo, it's okay to talk, dude. It's okay to talk. Find someone to talk. And it's crazy how today I've been preaching and talking to men. I do it with Rob when we do our walks. We talk to each other. Eric, Dr. Dan, we all walk the walk, and we're focused on men. But today you brought up a good point, Rob, when you brought up the kid side of it. So if I'm telling you guys out there that it's okay to talk and find someone to talk, do the same for your kids, so your kids won't have to go through 20 years. In 20 years, your kids won't feel the same way we're feeling right now as men because of this machismo. So thank you, brothers. I gotta say it in Spanish. Machismo. So man, I'm happy, man. I'm happy. I think this is going great, and I'm very looking forward to so many more seasons of Brothers in Arms because I believe in this. So thank you, brothers, for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for being here with us, guys. And Rob, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you on more.
Yeah, definitely. So Dr. Dan, I guess we went completely over today, so let's do it.
All right. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.
Yes. Brothers in Arms.
Primordial.
Oh, I was expecting it to be machismo.
No, Eric. Machismo.
Well, I wanted Rob to know I knew how to say the word now. Now, he doesn't know I've been closing out every show saying primordial.
I'm impressed.
Thank you.